All right, guys, make a little crypto video here. Interesting last week in Bitcoin. We saw a dump down to like 108, back up to 114, back down to 110 again. Now we're back up to 115. This pump started over the weekend, probably on Saturday night. This kind of started. Couldn't find too much news other than Trump coming up with, they're negotiating with China, so it looks like that might get rectified, that whole trade situation or tariff situation, which we already knew. It was kind of weird that the market even dumped on that to begin with. And of course, we have the rate cuts, which I guess that's the big news that everybody's waiting for right now. Rate cuts are coming out this week, and people want to, figure out exactly what's inside the Fed's head. So that's going to be all happening this week. But all in all, guys, everything's kind of lining up with Bitcoin. For me, I think it's extremely bullish that every time we dump, we get this major kickback up to 115. The question with me is, are we going to hold 115? And we really do. We're kind of running out of time. We're in November basically now. We're a couple of days away from November. We don't have a lot of time here if we're going to be following these 4-year cycles. So we want to see Bitcoin make it back up to all-time high. 125, 130 after we get the rate cut news, which should be extremely bullish, and then hopefully these altcoins follow. But if you do look at the altcoins, they're pretty much recovering nicely, especially like Ethereum. I mean, Ethereum is essentially back up to where it was, 4,200. BNB really never dumped all that much to begin with. You got XRP almost back up to $2.70. It's extremely bullish when you see altcoins making their way back up. That just tells you there's a lot of interest still in these markets. Even if you go down the list, Cardano's almost back up to 70 cents. I mean, a lot of these altcoins up 6%, 7%. And, not crazy moves, but we should get crazy moves after Bitcoin makes its all-time high. And that's what most people are predicting, all your big YouTubers, that people seem to like Benjamin Cowan. He's talking for Bitcoin dominance to go up, which it kind of is going up right now. Bitcoin to make its next all-time high, and then that money flowing down into your altcoins. It really needs to happen in November and December, where it's kind of scary right now. I was listening to Ivan on Tech this morning. I'm going to play a little bit of that. But we just want to make sure we're not in a fake out right now, where we keep pumping up to 115 and then basically dumping back down to 108. I mean, we can only do that for so long. If it was 6 months ago, it wouldn't have been that big of a deal. But if we're following the 4-year cycles, we're not talking about a super cycle. We're just basically saying, look, everything has to happen within this cycle. We just don't have a lot of time for Bitcoin to be beating around the bush and just kind of going to 115, 108, 115, 108, 120, 125, then back down to 110. We really don't have time for that. So me personally, what I think is going to happen, because I'm still overall bullish, I think Bitcoin's going to make its all-time high. I think we're going to bottom out around 130, 140. I think these altcoins are going to take off. But I think a lot of these altcoins are not going to make crazy gains. I think everybody's going to get really, really bullish. And Cardano's going to get up to $1.50 or something like that, $2. And I think the smart money is going to be selling then. I think, XRP will probably make it to 350, back up to 320, 350, and everybody's going to be calling for an all-out alt season. But because of this whole timing issue, I think that's the time to get out. I think the next big dump in Bitcoin, once it makes it past all-time high, 125, 130, 140, whatever it is, I think it's going to be somewhere in that range. I think the dump we get after that is going to be the dump that leads us into the bear market. And I don't think we're going to have any altcoin recovery after that, which is why it's so important for us to be getting out of these markets by the end of the year, unless we get some news we're going into a super cycle or whatever, or things start dragging out, and then we can consider holding. But if we're getting major altcoin pumpage in November, going into December, we really need to start looking to get out of these markets. And I think a lot of people, it's like a game of musical chairs. A lot of people are going to get stuck and they're not going to have a chair because all the smart money is going to be selling. The one thing we did see over the last couple of weeks with a lot of money getting taken out of Bitcoin, of course, with a dump, is a lot of these ETFs were selling Bitcoin, getting rid of their Bitcoin, selling their Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies at record high. So once we go into a bear market, you're going to see just net outflows out of these crypto ETFs. And it's going to be like that for years. People just aren't going to be coming in. And that's really going to kill the Bitcoin price, maybe taking us back down to $40,000 or something like that, possibly even lower, depending on what happens. Okay, so let's see. We got the stock market. Stock market up, obviously. It's on pace for first close above 6,800 ever. So stock market is basically, if this isn't a top signal on the stock market, I don't know what is. Stock market's at all-time highs, 6,800 on potential trade truce with China. Obviously, that's happening. I mean, we already knew that was going to happen. So obviously, obviously sometime in 2026, the stock market's going to crumble like you've never seen it, and we're going to have at least a year of bearishness on the stock market. And Bitcoin will crash even more than stocks, obviously, because it's a risk asset. So when the stock market crashes, and it's kind of all lining up, like the next Bitcoin bear market is kind of lining up for the whole stock market collapse as well. We've been talking about this for the last year on this channel, but overall, stock market doing great. Gold pulling back a little bit. From outflows to inflows, Bitcoin ETPs rally amid surprising economical update. Bitcoin, which has been the main driver of the crypto ETP outflows a week earlier, almost fully recovers its losses. So a lot of people are basically coming back into these crypto funds, which is what you would expect. And that's one reason you see Bitcoin coming up. But the minute we get bad news or the minute we go risk on again, then they basically are all going to sell again. And Bitcoin goes right back down to $105,000. So, it's just as easy to buy Bitcoin versus sell Bitcoin if you're an ETF. Bitcoin flashing rare top signal. Arthur Hayes tips 1 million BTC holders, blah, blah, blah. A veteran trader warns that Bitcoin may be nearing its peak if the soybean market is any indicator. Arthur Hayes returns with another major Bitcoin prediction and other news. XRP price eyes rally to $3.45 after Ripple CEO tells investors to lock in. What does he have planned? And of course, XRP has been pumping nicely over the last couple of days. XRP flashes signs of potential 35% breakout as bullish technicals align with fresh fundamentals, including Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse's renewed push for the blockchain company Internet Value of Vision. XRP's price chart technicals indicate that it has bounced from the lower trend line of its prevailing ascending triangle pattern. That support has historically marked the start of the powerful rebound moves, including 70 to 80% jumps earlier in 2025. Yeah, I mean, if XRP pops back up to like $3.50, I'll probably be out of it. The cool thing about XRP, and I've been saying this for a long time, there's just so many people in it. There's so many pumpers in it. And the funny thing about XRP, like, you remember like a couple years ago, everybody's talking about the whole cross-border payments for XRP, and that was going to take over the banking system. Well, that completely failed. Nobody gives a crap about that. Like that's now like all stable coins. But even with that failure, XRP is still one of the top performing altcoins because crypto, it's just all about the pump. It's all about the pump. If you have a good CEO in there who's going to throw out a bunch of hype, and you have a good community, they can pump your coins. And that's one reason that Cardano, I don't think, has pumped as well over the last year because, let's face it, Charles Hoskinson is not much of a pumper. And the Cardano community isn't really... The Cardano community, the one thing I notice about the Cardano community, and I say this saying that Cardano will probably get to $2 or $3 this cycle, they're almost like kind of like glum. Like whenever Cardano is dumping, you look at the Cardano community and they're like, oh, this sucks. Charles Hoskin needs to do better. But when like XRP is dumping, everybody's just positive. Like you go on like an XRP like Reddit page, everybody's like, oh, just give it time. Brad Garlinghouse is in charge. He's steering the ship. Everything's going to be great. Blah, blah, blah. Buy your XRP. Buy the dump. But Cardano guys are just more like, they're like sad sacks of shit. Like, oh, Charles Hoskinson sucks. He needs to do better. Oh, I've been holding my Cardano for 2 years and it hasn't done anything. I should have bought stocks. Like, the Cardano community needs to do better because they really are kind of pathetic. Now, with that said, I think Cardano is going to do totally well this cycle. But the XRP, even though XRP and Ripple has been a total failure as far as what they set out to do, cross-border payments. Like when I got into XRP years ago, it was all about they're taking over the cross-border payments. Banks are going to use them. Telegram's going to use them. They had some deal with that was it FedEx or one of those like money sending services where you go in, Western Union or something like that. That completely failed. But hey, it don't matter. XRP still went from 25 cents to almost $4 this cycle. So it goes to show with crypto, it don't matter. It don't matter how good your project is. It doesn't matter what you're doing. All that matters is how can you pump it? Is the CEO a good pumper? Just like Solana. Solana was going down and breaking down every fucking week over the last couple of years, and it didn't really matter. Nobody gave a shit because the founders were pumping the hell out of it, and all the big money was talking about Solana. Same with XRP. There's a lot of whales. There's a lot of big money in XRP. They're not letting XRP tank until, it hits $4 or $5. But we need to see a little bit more of that with Cardano. So that's what's going on with XRP. From Ivan on Tech this morning. I thought this was interesting.
Being fed with bull news, but the market does not react to bull news a lot. Let's say we cannot break 120. Let's say that we get stalled out at 120, we get rejected at 120. This is something to keep in mind as well, because this is kind of late cycle behavior that Bitcoin normally has. That yes, it has a bit of up, but then you have good news coming. This is great, that is great. But it kind of rolls over and shows a lot of weight, a lot of heaviness on the chart. So we don't want that. When the interest rate decision comes out and it is bullish as hell and they're saying that they're gonna end QT, this thing needs to fly ideally here towards 126 and establish new all-time high. That's very, very, very key. Now guys, we have a look.
Yeah, and it's as simple as that. If we're a believer in the 4-year cycles, we're following the 4-year cycles, that's what has to happen. If we get bullish interest rate news, we need to see Bitcoin pump back up to all-time highs. If it doesn't, we're either going into a super cycle or the bull market is completely over and it may be a good time to get out. Like I would almost say, like, even if you don't own any crypto right now, it's a risky time to buy because it's probably a 50-50 shot. Bitcoin's been getting rejected so many times off all-time high. We just don't know what Bitcoin's going to do. Technically, off the 4-year cycle, Bitcoin should be going up to 130, 140. Then we should be getting an alt season. But we're so close to the end of this cycle, it just has to happen in the next month or two. I mean, this is like the next 45 days. Like you could have been in a coma for the last 2 years. But now you need to be out of your coma. You need to be following crypto every day. You need to be reading the forums. You need to be, whatever your favorite altcoin is, you need to be reading their Twitter, seeing what they're up to, looking at the charts, looking at how crypto is responding to good news, because we're pretty much in the last 45 days of this cycle. So what else you got? We talked about the China crypto stocks climb alongside Bitcoin and NASDAQ on Chinese trade talk optimism. We said this a million times. China and U.S. have to make a deal when it comes to trade. The two countries cannot even survive unless they make a trade deal. So I'm not even sure why Bitcoin and crypto dumped all that much. I mean, whatever, off this whole trade and tariff situation, because we knew it would get rectified within a couple weeks. If you look at this, and this is another reason I'm kind of overall bullish right now. Tom Lee, as you guys know, he was like he's the guy who really allowed Ethereum to pump over the last year up to like $5,000 or $4,500, whatever it was, because his fund started buying a ton of Ethereum. Well, his fund has been still buying Ethereum over the last couple weeks, over the last month, over this dump. Tom Lee's Bitmine immersion added another $320 million in Ethereum, bringing its overall holding above $14 billion. So for whatever Tom Lee is doing, and I really do I at least trust his sense on the market, I think Tom Lee sees one more big pump in crypto, altcoins before the end of the year. And he's actually said this. I'm going to play a clip where he talks about that. But I think he's looking for one more big pump. I think he's looking for a $5,000, $6,000 Ethereum. And when he gets it, he's probably going to sell.
Concerns, global trade concerns, etc.
Crypto had a huge deleveraging event on October 10th. And part of that was triggered by the escalating tensions with U.S. and China on tariffs and trade. And that was the biggest liquidation event in 5 years for crypto. So there is still those ripple effects, 2 weeks later that are plaguing the crypto market. But I think we're almost through that, because a measure like something called open interest for both Ethereum and Bitcoin are at record lows at a time when the technicals for both Bitcoin and Ethereum are flipping positive. So I think you're going to see a crypto rally into the end of the year. And it really does help to see JP Morgan say they're open to the idea of using crypto as collateral.
Yeah, I was actually.
Anyway, so you got Tom Lee bullish for the end of the year, and I'm a big believer in Tom Lee, even though he's basically only pumping his bag. So here's what we got going on, guys. We got Tom Lee bullish, thinks we're gonna have a big crypto pump by the end of the year. We got the 4-year cycle, the 4-year cycle, which we've been following for the last 2 or 3 years on this channel. Like, we have that treasure map, the 4-year cycle, and we told ourselves, no matter what, we will follow the 4-year cycle. I told myself in 2021, when I was selling a lot of my altcoins to put them into Bitcoin because I didn't think my altcoins were going to do anything. Then 2 weeks after I sell my fucking altcoins, we go into alt season and my altcoins start outperforming Bitcoin. And I told myself, I said, Mike, please don't do that in 2024, 2025. Please don't do that again. And I even told myself, it's going to be tempting. I know the emotions are going to be there, but just don't do it. So I'm not going to do it. I'm holding. The 4-year cycle is coming to an end, guys. It's going to end probably by Christmas. The major thing is to see where we are at Christmas. If we're not in like full-blown altcoins going crazy, Cardano over $1.50 type situation, pushing $2 situation, XRP is basically under $3 and we're at Christmas, we need to seriously say, are we going to just continue holding, hoping for a super cycle, or are we just going to sell everything? I don't know. I'll make that decision when I get there. Look, if XRP is at $3 December 25th, and that looks like it's as high as it's going to go, and we're coming to the end of the cycle, I'll probably sell my XRP and maybe I'll sell my XRP and keep my Cardano. At least I made some money, some good money, because I bought most of my XRP at like 25 cents. But we really need things to start rocking and rolling in this cycle. I remember when I first got into crypto in 2017, I got in around December, January when things were at all-time highs. So I don't really remember where things were in like October, November, because I wasn't in. But when I got in, it was right around Christmas and things were at all-time highs. So that's usually the time when altcoins are at all-time highs. So we still have time. Bitcoin is recovering right now. In fact, it was at 116 this morning. Now we're back down to, we're pushing 116 again. We're at 115,500. It does look like Bitcoin's going to do its best right now to try to get back up to $120,000, $125,000. We should have an altcoin run after that. But like I said, if Bitcoin keeps getting rejected at like 125, we do have a timing issue. So we need to start rocking and rolling. I think we're going to get good news with this whole interest rate thing at the end of the month, or excuse me, end of the week. Well, I guess it's end of the month too. And that should help us. But overall, people were calling for a bear market about a month ago when Bitcoin went down to 102, and I said, I'm just not seeing it. We can't be in a bear market if you're still seeing these altcoins hanging on and you're seeing Bitcoin keep trying to make its way back to all-time highs. Now, yeah, we could get something where Bitcoin goes up to $130,000, crashes, and altcoins don't do anything, and we go into a bear market. But why would we take that philosophy when we're following the 4-year cycles? It could happen, and if it does happen, lesson learned, Bitcoin's not following the 4-year cycles anymore, blah, blah, blah. We should have just basically sold or stayed in Bitcoin. But the way I see it, things are basically following the previous cycle. Altcoins, not pumping as hard as they did previous cycle, but we still have another 2 months. We have a solid 2 months of this cycle, and I think these altcoins can pump hard. Cardano can go from 70 cents to $1.50 in a couple days. I've seen it happen before. So, we have 55, 60 days. A lot can happen in 60 days, especially with altcoins. So, everything looking good. Let's see what happens. Like and subscribe. Talk to you later.